The second the headset goes on, all I'm rooting for is a quality game. There were times where I did push back a bit with my wife and with my kids. I'm a guy that still does everything by hand. Do not besmirch anybody that will do it by computer.
Hey, I'm Jeff Skversky. On this episode of Inside The Huddle, presented by Sportskeeda, I catch up with one of the most familiar voices you will hear when you watch sports, the one and only play-by-play man, Ian Eagle, who does NFL on CBS as well as the NBA on TNT. He's also the Brooklyn Nets announcer for the Yes Network. He does work for the Tennis Channel. And of course, he does college basketball as well. One of the best play-by-play guys in the business. We're going to talk about his career and his family, which includes his son, Noah, who's the play-by-play man for the Los Angeles Clippers. We'll talk about his background and much more, including everything going on with the Brooklyn Nets and what may or may not happen on this episode of Inside the Huddle, presented by Sportskeeda. Great to see you. Thanks for joining me on the show today. How are you?
Doing great. Appreciate you having me. Gearing up for football, getting back into the mindset. Summer is like a time of complete tranquility for me.
Minus having to do this.
I know. So like I'm just in that headspace where I know it's happening, and once I'm in it, I'm all in.
Does it kind of take you a second to kind of gear up? I mean, you know, you're having this maybe some time off and then it really gets nuts, but you almost have to get like a kick in the butt in a sense to kind of get going and start to pay attention to the teams and the leagues. And
yeah, a little bit. You know, the NFL preseason is set up now in a way where it feels almost like a soft launch. Right. You're doing the research. I do the Jets games in the New York area, and I've done national games for the preseason for a number of years. So you're in it, but your toe is in the pool. You're not completely immersed in it. And then week one of the NFL season hits, and it's like a tidal wave because you know that now the games are coming a mile a minute. I do Thursday nights on the radio, so that's often 2 games a week. So you're preparing for 4 teams. If you just do the pure numbers of it, you know, you're looking at 53 players on a roster, 4 rosters a week, over 200 players that you're memorizing names, numbers, background, information. I'm a guy that still does everything by hand, Jeff. I can't get out of that approach, and it works for me. I do not besmirch anybody that will do it by computer or find other methods. Sometimes some guys will farm it out to services. I just know that I've got to write it out. I've got to visualize it. It's got to get into my brain. And then when you need it, when you need to summon it, it's going to be there because you know where everything is, or you've compartmentalized it enough to stick it in some portion of your brain.
But when you're doing that much, I imagine you have days you're going, all right, is it Durant's right ankle, or was it Jalen Hurts' right ankle? And then when you're doing that much, is there ever the concern of going, I'm spreading myself too thin. I don't want to give any of this up. These opportunities, you know, it's difficult to get. Yeah. I don't want to not do it. And you do love doing it, and it's still a thrill. Yeah. You have moments where you're just going, wait, was it the right ankle? Well, this guy or that? You must have those moments.
Yeah, you have checks and balances like anything in life. So how you put together your preparation is really important. To know that you can look down, you know exactly where it's going to be, or if it requires some kind of tool in your brain to make sure you're checking every box. When I get into NFL, NBA, college basketball, when all 3 are hitting at the same time, you're swimming in it. So if you're not really paying attention and consciously putting yourself in the moment in your preparation, something will slip through the cracks. And at the most important time of broadcast, when you're searching or looking or thinking of something and it's not there, you've got a problem. So you've got to guard against it. It does require every morsel of your being to be involved and make sure that you are fully engaged in whatever assignment you're given for that day, that week, that month, that year. That's got to be the way you attack it.
So I imagine you're not present at home much when all this is going on, and you take out the trash or do you do the dishes? You're like what?
That? Yeah, I don't. Do people do that? No, I recognized pretty early. I married my college sweetheart, so it's not like one day I just threw this out there that I wanted to do this for a living.
Right.
And it wasn't as if she thought, oh wow, he's going to be a dentist, so that'll be solid and he'll be home every night. She knew what this was about. It wasn't always smooth. We broke up right towards the end of college when I think she realized, oh, no, he's serious about this. We got back together, broke up again before we finally made the commitment and got married pretty young. We were 24 years old. So
wow.
We're talking about 29 years of marriage. And you figure it out. Kids, this is all they knew. They knew that I did play-by-play for a living. I traveled around the country. I needed to prepare. And I did the best that I possibly could in making it to every event I could make it to, being present in the moment when that required. And then also, like anything in life, them seeing their father as a happy person, content, right, happy, excited about work, waking up in the morning, not lamenting what I do for a living, but looking forward to the event and what goes into it. And then, fortunately, traveling at times and seeing what it's all about, or coming to a broadcast booth, or coming to the arena and getting a firsthand look at what this job really entails.
Yeah, I imagine, look, you've had this amazing career, this dream job. You're calling NFL games on CBS, NBA TNT, Brooklyn Nets announcer, Tennis Channel matches. We can go on all day long. But is your biggest accomplishment, in a sense, watching your son Noah call Clippers games? Going, that has to be really cool for you to witness that and see him do that.
I think it might end up sounding a bit coy, but it is the truth. It surpasses anything I've done. Anything your kid accomplishes at any stage of life is bigger than what you've done. It's just how it is. And it starts from toddler years into preteen, teen, college years. My son is 25, my daughter's 23. They're both really good people, more than anything else, people that you would be proud of and you'd want to hang out with and have dinner with and converse with. And then on the professional side, the fact that he chose to do this, that's beyond any father or parent's dream, that your child would be interested in what you do to the level that they'd want to pursue it. It's not an easy business, as we know. And I certainly didn't tell him at a young age, hey, you should do this. This would be great. This was something he found on his own, being around it. I think osmosis played a big role, and seeing the satisfaction of doing a good job and getting to be around sports and enjoying what you do, that certainly was an integral part as well. But to watch him develop into the broadcaster that he's already become, and how he handles himself and how he conducts himself, that far surpasses anything that I've done in my life.
That's awesome. And so, I've heard Joe Buck talk about, he grew up obviously with the legendary Cardinals announcer. Jack Buck is his father, and he was in the booth for games. And so growing up, how much was Noah present at any of these games that you were doing? Was he in the booth were you bringing him to work? Was he the kid just listening and learning just by watching you? Or would you keep him away from that going, well, it's not his place to be? Like, how did you kind of manage that when he was younger?
Yeah, you pick and choose the moments that work. I certainly was not someone that thought the stadium and the arena was there for me to use it as I please. I recognized that it was a professional environment, and I knew certain situations would be more conducive to family than others. Never pushed it Certainly never forced it, but yes, he was there quite a bit. TV side, radio side, football side, basketball side, NCAA tournament when again it made sense and the timing was good. Look, a part of it, as I think back on it now, because my routine was so regimented and my preparation was such, there were times where I did push back a bit with my wife and with my kids, saying, "Hey, look, I need total concentration in
Right.
order to do this job well. I need to get a good night's sleep. I need to be present and fully committed to whatever event that I'm calling." So certainly when they were young, I probably would come up with a reason for them not to be there. But then, as they hit their, uh, preteen, 12, 10, where they could take care of themselves, where they were more self-sufficient, and where I knew I could trust them once they got to the booth.
Right.
Yeah, then as often as I could, they would be a part of it. My daughter had very little interest. She was curious, but within 5, 10 minutes, the game meant very little. What I noticed with Noah, even early on, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, those opportunities that he was around it, he was locked in. And not just at what I was doing, but the whole production, how it worked, the communication, the nonverbal communication between me and my partner, and putting a headset on, listening to a producer in your ear and what that was like, what they were saying, what the stat person did, what the audio person did, taking it all in. And I think that did spur a lot of his interest in maybe pursuing this as a career, because he just got to see it at every level and at the form where you would have to really love it, because it's not about what the finished product was. It was about how you make the sausage. And he got to see that.
Right. No, it's an interesting perspective. And when you look at what you've been able to do, you probably also at that same time where he was coming into the booth a little bit more, you probably also relaxed. You were able to relax and got more comfortable probably at that
Sure.
same time where you're not looking at these boards that you make color coded with different colors going, what does that say? What does that say? And you're able to relax a little bit more. And so that probably came at the same time. And it's interesting because you grew up kind of in a show business kind of family. Your dad was a comedian, right?
Yeah, my dad was a comedian, actor, musician. My mother was a singer, entertainer, actress.
So it's in the blood.
Yeah, that's all I knew, Jeff. Like, I know we are often a product of our upbringing and our background and our parents. And then somewhere along the line, you form your own philosophies, opinions, and how to handle and navigate life. You can take input and you could get really good advice, but you have to go out and do it.
Right.
From my earliest memory, I think of my parents as going out and entertaining people and trying to make a living doing that. And my father's big break really came in commercials, where he had about a 4-year stretch where anything he went up for, he got. Hertz, Xerox, Fleischmann's margarine, Samsonite, Coppertone, Campbell's soup. I can go on and on. He did about 50 commercials over the course of that time period. And it was interesting because I was maybe 7 when this started to happen. It was interesting to see how life changed for him and how it affected his other job, which was stand-up comedy, and how his rate went up and his popularity went up because he became a more familiar face. But who he was didn't change. He was, really smart and creative and a very affable human being. People that would come up to him, he made time for them and made them feel comfortable. I remember vividly, people coming up to him and talking to him for 10, 15, 20 minutes and going on and on like they were deep friends, and him asking about their families. And then they'd walk away and I'd say, "Who was that?" He'd say, I have no idea. Just to make them feel good. Oh, I saw you in a show, 1977. Do you remember? Oh, yeah, yeah. And that played a big role in my approach with people. And even though it was a different venue, sports broadcasting, my dad was not a huge fan. He was a fan because he knew I was into it, but I wouldn't have called him a true fanatic of sports. But he got interested in it because of me and watched a lot, consumed a lot because I was doing it and took pride in that. So yeah, there was definitely a performance gene in there and something about crowds, the camera, the microphone, never ever intimidated by the idea of doing that for a living.
Yeah, my daughter's 6 now, and I kind of see that with her where I'm out or we're somewhere and somebody will come up to me and start talking about Eagles or Phillies or Flyers or Sixers or whatever it is. And she'll be like, Daddy, who's that? And I'm like, I don't know. And like, I always try to be nice and always, I remember as a kid wanting to be a sportscaster, be a sports announcer, just watching it and just remembering, I go, it could end tomorrow. Just be nice. Like they're essentially your customers. And, but it's interesting too. Like you think about your dad's living. I mean, his job essentially is to entertain people. Your job's a lot different. Like people aren't watching the game for you. Like they're going to watch the game. Right. And so you almost have to, as a play-by-play guy, and I've heard Joe Buck talk about it and Jim Nance, you don't want to overstep the moment. Use the net sound and, you're not the show, right? Like they're going to, you make it enjoyable and storylines and talk about what's going on. But did you have to watch that early on at an early age in your career going, I'm not here to be the entertainer?
Yeah, I did. There's no doubt about it. No handbook out there. You have to figure it out as you go. It's trial and error. It's making mistakes and then trying to solve it the next time you're in that given situation. The way I've tried to look at it, Jeff, is first and foremost, it's your job to inform. That's the main job, and it's your job and it's my job. That's why people tune in. They want information and you're there to provide it. You can't expect them, fans, to be into it at the level in which you might be into it. Some are, but many are leading their lives and they've got full-time jobs and they're parents and they've got problems and they've got things that they're dealing with. And they look to you to hopefully give them the information that they need in the moment, whether it's 3 minutes of sports at night or whether it's tuning in for a big game on a Sunday. But then there is another level, and that is to entertain, to make it fun, to make it interesting, to make it compelling.
Right.
So anybody can get on camera and recite the scores. How do you differentiate yourself?
Right.
Well, it's in your presentation. It's in your comportment. It's in how you use the information and now send it out. So play-by-play, look, a touchdown's a touchdown.
Right.
It's your job now.
You can't screw it up. Like, you
can't screw it up. Can't screw it up.
Yeah.
But it's your job, at least in my eyes. I'm not saying this is how everybody views it, but the way I've always seen it, it is your job to meet the moment and then sometimes to enhance.
Right.
If it's a fantastic catch and you soft shoe it and just give it a quick touchdown, you're not meeting the moment.
Right.
Because at home, someone is jumping out of their chair, reacting to this twisting, turning reception in the corner of the end zone. If you can't recognize in that moment that this might be a little bit more than your average touchdown and your voice and your vocabulary doesn't reflect it, you're going to look back when you play the highlights that night and say, that was a missed opportunity.
Right.
I need to do better. And I do think the NBA in many ways, if you're a play-by-play announcer, it makes you get to that place. Because at any moment, Joel Embiid could rip down the backboard and the rim.
Right.
Or James Harden could have a between the legs pass, between his legs and the defender's legs, a nutmeg that leads to a dunk. And if you're not there, if you miss it, if you're looking at your notes, if you're staring into space, if your mind is somewhere else, then you've missed a golden opportunity to do your job really well. So that puts pressure on you.
Yeah.
That's self-inflicted, but that's how I view it. That's how I view the job. We had a moment in the Memphis playoff run against Minnesota this year in the NBA where Ja Morant had a ridiculous dunk where he took off and extended and kept going, and it was powerful. And it wasn't your run-of-the-mill dunk. It required something a little extra. And in the moment, what came out of my mouth was that it was a jawbreaker, a play on the candy that you may have had as a kid, that I had as a kid, and a saying of some sort. And it just, in the moment, fit and became somewhat memorable because the highlight and the call came together and create a little something memorable, something that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you can play back the call and go, "Oh yeah, that was pretty good."
Is that your favorite call? Is that like a favorite? I mean,
I don't know.
What
I don't know.
Do you have one? Like, do you have a favorite call?
No, I don't know if I have a favorite call or a favorite moment. I like to think that when the drama goes up a notch, that I can be there with it. When you see Arizona last second win against Buffalo, and a little Murray magic took place at the end, and you can at least nail the call with no fans in attendance and fake crowd noise and feel like you still got to a place that you needed to get to, or there's 4 laterals at the end of a Miami New England game and the Dolphins pull off a shocking win, a miracle win. You just want to be authentic more than anything else. And I think the repetition of doing games, recognizing the moment, and trying at the very least to catch yourself from becoming a robot and a machine, that it still matters to you, and you still can come up with something that resonates. That's all you hope for. But the reality, Jeff, is when you do play-by-play, no different when you're doing your sportscasts, you're judged on your last show.
Right.
And I'm judged on my last game. I get that.
Right.
And that's how it should be, by the way.
Yeah. And it's hard, though, in the sense, like, you know, with your thing, it's hard because you want to get excited in those big moments, but sometimes you cannot call that moment because you don't know if it was caught. You don't know 100%. If that guy was in bounds. You don't, there's certain moments where, you know, the David Tyree catch in the Super Bowl that Joe Buck gets killed over. I go, he had to make sure the call's right. And so it goes back to kind of the principles of broadcasting, which is it's better to be right than it is better to be first. And so, you know, that's a tough balance. And look, nobody wants to hear it. I'm sure there's people out there, you know, you're one of the best play-by-play guys that exists. Yet I'm sure people out there think you hate their team or things like, no. I mean, do you get that from fans? Like, will you walk?
Oh, yeah.
Link, if there's a last second Eagles finish and the Eagles lose and you're at the link, does everyone think because you're excited about, you know, the Lions scoring the game winning touchdown, do they think you hate the Eagles? Is that a thing?
I mean, all of that sounds very much impossible to happen. Okay. The whole setup that you just gave me, that Detroit's going to pull off the last second win in Philadelphia right now. But yes, it's only natural. I think at some point as a fan, you have stages, and one of the stages is blame the messenger. And I get that. I understand that. I can tell you in all sincerity, complete forthrightness and honesty and being as frank as possible, the second the headset goes on, all I'm rooting for is a quality game, a competitive game. What happens, how it goes, it's irrelevant to me, other than as a broadcaster trying to do a great job. And I can't speak for every play-by-play announcer, but I have to think that most, at least on the national level, feel the same way. Now, what happens? I'll give you a scenario that takes place. And this is very possible. Pittsburgh is visiting Cincinnati, and the Steelers have a last-second victory on the road and get the W. And my call is of a Pittsburgh last-second field goal or touchdown in Cincinnati. The crowd now is non-existent. You have no crowd noise to back up your call. And you've got to be really aware of what gear you go to.
Right.
If you make a call and it's a 9 or a 10 on the excitement level, volume level, and you have no crowd to balance it, it doesn't sound as good. Crowd helps. So a home team winning, you go to 9 or 10, the crowd is there, it all meshes together beautifully. You might have to temper your call, even just naturally, subconsciously, to a 7 or 8 to make sure it comes out the right way, it sounds good, and it lives forever. But the fans of that team might see it as, wait, you're not giving it the same juice as what I heard earlier with a Joe Burrow touchdown pass. Well, on the Joe Burrow touchdown pass, you had 65,000 people screaming, and you're trying to match their energy and cut through. So that happens. It happens in the NBA as well, where you got 20,000 people and the road team wins at the buzzer, and you're up here and the crowd is not. And you now have to make an adjustment on the fly to make sure that the call is good and quality and coherent. And I think sometimes there could be a little bit of a detachment from the fan in that situation that doesn't understand what's at play there.
Yeah. And I guess, look, you can have those moments where you do have those fan moments when you're doing the Nets games because you're the Nets announcer. And so your audience are Nets fans. And so I guess you can have a few more of those moments when you're calling Nets games, I imagine.
Yeah, you can. You're a home team announcer. But look, I don't know if this was just innate or being from New York and recognizing that there was a certain standard in which broadcasters would do their job as the line of delineation. I got the job in 1994. I was 25 years old. I'm figuring it out as I go. I get the TV job the next year. So radio 1 year, TV the next year. And I do a Nets Seattle Supersonics game. And the Nets were not very good. And the game's in Seattle. And Gary Payton and Sean Kemp are just having their way. Up and down the floor, alley-oop feeds, Kemp, angle dunks, no-look feeds, Kemp, powerful jams. And I'm calling it. And they're impressive. And the crowd's going nuts at Key Arena, and I'm matching the level. And I'm calling the highlight because that's what it is. And the Nets are getting beat by 20. So get back. This is pre-email, pre-Twitter, pre-social media, pre-internet for that matter. And I get a piece of mail to the Nets offices, and it's addressed to I.N. Eagle. So it's I.N. Eagle, which I actually thought was fairly creative. He thought my name was Igor Nicholas Eagle. I don't know what he thought.
I was going to joke, like people must mess up your name all the time.
Yes, I accepted that from birth.
It looks simple and easy, but I know that people.
Yeah, I mean, what I would tell you is for people that say, "Hey, it's Ian," I said, "Well, okay, but if you put a BR in front of it, what would you get?" They go, "Brian." So, well, yeah, just take off the BR. What do you have? They're like, "Oh, I see what you mean." So me and Ian Ziering from Beverly Hills 90210 had to deal with with that
Okay.
and it's not a problem. I accepted that many years ago. So I get the piece of mail, and I'm not sure what kind of language I can use here, Jeff.
Keep it clean.
Clean. Okay. So I'll clean it up. Dear jerk. That wasn't the word. Why are you getting so excited for the Seattle Supersonics? I watched the game the other night, and you sounded more excited for Seattle than you did with the Nets. The Nets lost the game by 20 points.
Right.
And I wrote him back, and I was nice in the letter back. And I said, I understand your point. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. I'm there to call the game. If there's an exciting highlight, it's my job to be a conduit of the excitement at the arena to you and your house. Doesn't mean I'm rooting for anybody else. Of course, my life is better if the Nets win, but that's my thought process. And that really has been my thought process. Then he wrote me back and he wrote, I can't believe you responded. I really love your work. You know, it was one of those that often happens in that situation. But I hearken back to that a lot. I wouldn't say I'm a homer by any stretch. I call the game. I call it through a Nets lens on the Nets games.
Right.
But if I did a Nets 76ers national game,
it's different.
You wouldn't be able to know I was the Nets announcer. I'd call the game as it's supposed to be called.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talk about the Nets struggling years ago. And, you know, I guess if they don't figure out this situation now with Durant and Kyrie and Ben Simmons, and they look like they have a super team. If they don't figure this out now, they could be headed in that direction again.
Yeah, and I think that's why this is such an important time in the franchise's history. They're not going to just make a deal by happenstance to satisfy Kevin Durant. They're only going to make a deal if it makes sense for them. And of course, there's the possibility that they can somehow salvage the relationship and Durant and Kyrie are back and they see him with Ben Simmons, which, by the way, they are yet to see. They haven't seen those three guys on the court yet.
It's so weird. It's weird. But they look on paper like they have this super team. They have a good coach. He knows what he's doing. They have this team and you're going, what's the problem?
Yeah, something was amiss last year. Chemistry is one of those things, and it's not tangible, but you know it when you've got it. And they just didn't have it last year.
How do you see it playing out?
Yeah, my sense of it is they're playing the long game here. They're not hastily doing anything, and unless somebody really blows them away, I still believe there's a very good chance that they come back with the core group. They've made some changes on the periphery with some of the other players, but I think they believe that they still have a legitimate chance if they can stay healthy, if they can get everybody on the same page. These are big ifs in the NBA, but at least that's my sense of it, that they'd like to give this thing another go. And then if it doesn't work, of course, now you recognize that something has to change. Kevin Durant has 4 years left on his deal. He wasn't making the statement that he made from a position of strength, in that you can demand a trade. They don't have to necessarily give it. There have been plenty of players that have demanded trades. The team doesn't give in ultimately, and they still have success with that player. So that's a very distinct possibility.
Yeah. Last thing for you. I want to get you out of here. I don't want to tie up your entire day. And so as the NFL gets started here, your favorite for Super Bowl champion, who would it be?
You know,
I know
we see in the NFL, maybe more than any other sport, basketball, I would say there's a similar vibe to a team that gets to a certain level and in your gut, you say, that's it. They're just not going to be able to get over the top. And we've seen it. We've seen it with the NFL recently. The Atlanta Falcons were right on the verge of winning a Super Bowl. Couldn't do it. Never sniffed that spot again. I think the Buffalo Bills are a team that showed you what they can do and are still capable of going to another level. So if you're asking me today in August, before we really get this thing going in earnest, and injuries and all the things that happen over the course of an NFL season, to me, the Buffalo Bills are the most balanced and the team I would choose to ultimately hoist that trophy when it's all said and done.
That's a good one. Sean McDermott's done a great job
Yes.
in Buffalo. It's unreal. Well, thanks so much, Ian Eagle, for joining me. I love listening to you call the
Thank
games,
you, Jeff.
TV, radio, every sport, you name it, getting it done. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, great to see you, man. Excellent conversation, and have a terrific season. We'll do it again down the road.
You too. Take care.
I like this.